What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Michael Nicosia, and you could check him out at salt.security. We're going to dig into that, Michael. Before we do, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the top SaaS series, here's a couple other episodes. I did a interview with one of the co-founders of Zapier, Wade Foster, who also went through Y Combinator, I believe, as you guys did. That was a really interesting episode. I had the founder of Jotform, a taken tank on. He talked about obviously revolutionizing online forums, productivity, and how he built the company to over 25 million users. So that was really interesting. And one of the co-founders of Pipedrive. I think when I had him on, they were around 10,000 customers. Now they're over 100,000, and just a really interesting journey. And it's sometimes rocky along the way. So it was cool to see that and him to share openly about that. So check more out on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do this in a few ways. One, we're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, accountability, and the full execution and production. We also are an easy button for our companies gifting. So we make gifting and staying top of mind to clients, partners, prospects, even people send to their staff from a culture perspective, simple, easy, and affordable. And all you do is give us a list of the people. We do everything else. Everything's branded to you. And we actually send, it's not like a one-off gift. We like to send campaigns. So maybe think every 4 months for 4 years, a gift to your favorite people. So, Michael, we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that run in the background to make it stress-free to build amazing relationships so you can run your business. And, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I always look at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I admire on the podcast, and to send them sweet treats in the mail. So if you have questions, go to rise25.com or email support@rise25.com. And a thank you to iBrand Visual, who helped create this sign behind me. If you're watching the video, I needed it for years. I needed an upgrade, and they helped with it. And they do interior and exterior signs from startups to Fortune 500, like even companies like the Ritz have their signs with iBrand Visual too. So check them out. But I'm excited to introduce, as I mentioned, Michael Nicosia, and he's a serial entrepreneur, software technology executive. He's COO and co-founder of Salt Security. In 2016, Michael partnered with Roy, and they established Salt, which is a SaaS cybersecurity startup. And basically, they're a platform built to secure AI agents and MCP servers. Which recently, Michael, I heard of a case where someone had a big launch and one of their AI agents got hacked and information got leaked. So this stuff is real and it happens, especially more and more people are using it. And they're backed by companies like Sequoia and Y Combinator and many more. Michael, thanks for joining me.
Jeremy, thank you. I appreciate you having me, and appreciate the introduction. Thank you.
That's the most talking I'll do all day because I want to hear about Salt. So as you do that, there is a video portion if people want to check it out. Just talk about Salt and what you do, and I'll pull up the site.
Yeah, we started the company, went through YC in 2016, but really in 2018 is when we, started Salt Security. And basically, it was the notion of if you think about these digital services, right, as applications or APIs, it's, we're able to discover, we're able to govern, and then protect against any, bad actors that are trying to steal sensitive data. So that's really what we do. And obviously today, the, AI agents, MCP, agent to agent, protocols are all kind of exploding the need to not only secure them, but obviously to discover them and to govern them.
Can you just, for lay people like myself, just explain an API. And we're looking here, I know API is a connection point, but how do you kind of explain in layman's terms what an API is?
Yeah, and it's funny you ask, Henry, because obviously everybody's like APIs, it's kind of like the building blocks of applications. And if you think about an application, 85% of it is API driven. But really think about APIs as digital services. And when I talk about digital services, think about, mobile apps, web apps, microservices, AI agents, MCP protocols, agent to agent protocols. Those are all driven mostly by APIs. And normally, a lot of sensitive data are housed in these APIs, and that's what we really, protect against.
Yeah, like when I picture APIs, I picture like connection point. Obviously, there's companies like Make and Zapier, and the like you go in, okay, I want to take my data from Active Campaign, move it, or from someone who signs up in Calendly to Active Campaign, you can set up that connection point
Mhm.
with whatever Zapier Make, and it sends information. It's really that's an API. Is that accurate?
It, exactly. So even in this kind of agentic AI scenario, if you think about you've got Chat GPT and you're asking a question, once you ask that question, that API call is an API that goes into like a server, like an MCP protocol, and then that MCP protocol shoots data to a thousand other servers, backend servers. Those are all API driven calls that come back and provide you an answer. So really think about APIs as that movement from one app to another app. And it doesn't even have to be application. It could be, an application hardware. I mean, it could be a variety of different things, but it's that communication point between, two apps, an app with a hardware, those kinds of things.
It is mind blowing to think what happens when we're using ChatGPT or something else and it happens like instantaneously. I picture like similar to like a cell phone, like I'm making calls, like hitting some kind of satellite coming back like within a
Exactly.
millisecond. And if it delays, we're like, what's going on? I think Louis C.K. has a funny joke on that. Wait, it's going all the way to space and then coming back, and we get mad if it's like takes an extra like 0.2 seconds or something like that. But that's what I picture
Exactly.
with this. Um, Talk about some lessons from Y Combinator.
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate enough in 2016 to start with YC, and basically it's a 2 week program that basically helps you in a variety of different ways. It's really to not only start your company, your business plan, your cap table, how to structure it, how to go and put together kind of your first customer story, and then how to perhaps even speak to investors. So it was a phenomenal, 2 week journey. And one of the greatest things about it was that Sam Altman was our coach in that whole process, which was really, really cool. And, obviously not only himself, but there's a number of other, high-powered individuals that we were able to meet. But they basically give you all of these coaching and techniques and how to start your business. And it was fabulous for us
That's a pretty cool
in putting
coach to
together.
have.
Yeah.
What you remember any advice from Sam Altman?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it was, just focus on, kind of like, what's important from a customer perspective. So kind of the outcome was the most important thing because, a lot of founders start companies and they think about, cool things that they're doing, but they don't, talk about the value associated with what customers are going to receive. So I think that was the biggest element that, we made sure that we wanted to focus on.
I'd like to talk about, and this is, when you went through Y Combinator, but I want to back up a little bit and how you met your co-founder.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate enough. We had some mutual friends. Saf Rappaport, who is the co-founder, CEO of Wiz, actually got us introduced in 2015. And I was part of the founding fathers of Adallom, which are also the founding fathers of Wiz. That started the company in
Adallom got
2012.
acquired by Microsoft at one point too.
Yes. Yes. So we started in 2012 and then we got acquired in 2015 by Microsoft. For at the time was phenomenal numbers. There was 320 million. In today's world, it
Not at the
doesn't seem
time.
that
I think
much.
that's phenomenal at any time in my
Yeah,
mind, but
yeah, yeah. And it was amazing. And anyway, as we were, kind of going through the journey, Roy and Asaf had connected up in Israel, and he had wanted to meet me, and he helped kind of broker that meeting, and we met, towards the latter part of 2015 to really, talk about this concept of, discovering and securing APIs.
I'm curious because like you have a really cool career trajectory in all these companies, and I feel like starting up a big, oh, forget it. Like this is too much work at some point. So what was the original idea and what made you be like, okay, I'm gonna go in on a startup and work long hours and toil away?
Yeah, I mean, I think because I had started my career in very big companies like Hewlett Packard, PeopleSoft, Oracle, Citrix. So, and at one point in time, you build some successes associated with that, and then I always had this dream of starting something and really building something from scratch. So, like in 2011, when I met Asaf to start Adallom in 2012. I just took a leap of faith, to be honest, Jeremy. I just thought, how cool would it be to start a company with these three guys? And, we had what, five other developers, thinking at the time, which is very similar to what we, decided with Salt Security. And I thought it would be really interesting and exciting to build something from scratch. And honestly, deep inside, I was always thinking, can you do something like this? And it was like I was scared to death, but I took the leap, and knock on wood, everything worked out from an all perspective, and obviously now from a salt security perspective, it's worked out, and it's been a dream, for me over the last what almost 15 years.
I know when people enter into Y Combinator, there are different stages. Sometimes they have, just a mock-up, a proof of concept. Some people have revenue. Where was your company at when you were starting Y Combinator?
Yeah, just an idea. We didn't have a customer. We didn't have a product. It was just a thought in terms of, as, kind of technology and innovation was starting to kind of, build through all of these mobile web apps, microservices, specifically microservices. And we were concentrated on that because it was ideal at the time. When you think about 2016 or 2015, so it was a concept, and we applied, and I remember, and Roy still has the recorded voicemail that Sam, he called Roy and basically said, we'd love to have you at YC, and it was exciting. I remember we were like screaming, and we were so excited. So yeah, it was a concept, and then from that concept, there's a lot of hard work in terms of making that concept into a full life product, into creating a market with like a Mark O'Neill at Gartner, to getting your first customer, to really kind of scaling the organization.
Talk about the first milestone from a customer perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
I know
how we
you maybe
start.
I'll have to mention customers, but
Yeah,
you maybe industry wise.
sure. Yeah, and how we started, I mean, and it was very similar to Adallom is, we literally, so you identify your buyer, and at the time, for us, it's always been the CISO of organization, the Chief Information Security Officer. So what we did is, we created, maybe 20 to 50 meetings associated with some of the CISOs that we knew, or our friends knew. And basically it was just a simple ask as, look, we think, that there's a problem in the industry where APIs are exposed, and they can be dangerous if bad actors are able to hack into them and steal sensitive data. What are your thoughts on that? Right. So initially it's just getting validation that, other people, like your buyer, sees that there is a problem. Once you identify that it's a problem, and it's a big problem, because they could spend lots of money if something bad happened, like a breach from an API security perspective, to if you were looking at a solution and I gave you a canvas with paintbrushes, how would that solution kind of look like? And grabbing that concept into building a product. And we did that throughout. And, obviously you get your first successes with your first customer to your 10th customer. And then, a huge retail a customer of ours that really hit our first, 8-figure deal or 7-figure deal for us, which was amazing and a huge milestone and great celebration and validation point to not only is this a problem, it's a big problem, and you need to solve it.
You don't have to talk specific pricing, but I mean, I'm looking at your website here, and when we talk about big problem, this could be huge for a company. We're looking at, Google, there was a settlement. This is $350 million, right? Meta, 1.2 billion, PayPal, 2 million, Uber. Obviously you can go, hey, do you want to spend this or do you want to lose 350 million? So like, how do you decide on pricing? Because it's obviously a value, but I don't know how many people are really going in, and I figure I kind of see this as like a niche within a niche, right? It's just like you're specific to these AI agents and APIs. So how do you determine pricing early on?
Yeah, initially, I mean, you take a closer look at what the industry has done in the past, maybe some of the other successful SaaS organizations. You can think about Palo Alto, you can think about CrowdStrike, and you look at some of the even Splunk, some of the models that they use, and how we came about it was just we wanted to make it super simple, and obviously there's a big impact if you do get breached, and there's a lot of money associated with some of the breaches that companies have to pay. And not only do they have to pay, obviously, then there's a brand awareness that creates disruption from that perspective, especially if you're a financial services company or a retail company or any other digital
Yeah.
services where
Lack of trust
consumer,
immediately.
yeah, because you have lack of trust. So we basically thought the consumption model like a Splunk and some of the other SaaS organizations use would be ideal. And, obviously the trick is once you have that and it's simple to kind of identify with, it's all about how you create that perceived value of the amount of money that, customers are willing to spend on that problem.
Talk about, so like a customer says, like, because I know on your site, you help a lot of different types of companies, right? There's
Yeah.
transportation companies, healthcare companies,
Yeah.
retail companies, software companies, finance companies. You know, what does the implementation look like? They go, yeah, let's do this. Then what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's super simple because normally what happens in our industry is they do a proof of value. And once you do a proof of value, and there's a variety of ways that we can get up and running, we can do traffic lists where we can, via an API, just get up and running to your cloud environment, whether you're AWS, Azure, or GCP. Just like the Wiz model, and then once you get up and running, you can, we could provide the discovery and the governance part of it, any posture gaps that you might have, and then, and then once, customer says, yeah, let's go. I mean, we could just translate that into, live in production kind of movement. So it literally takes minutes for us once the POV is secured into that technical win and into, yes, we're fully deployed. And then we can expand, whether it's, a division or then, company wide. It's very simple for us.
Talk about your roles between you and Roy, because I know you have different skill sets.
Yeah, yeah, it's very bifurcated if you think, and if you look at it, obviously Roy is way, way more technical than I am, and he's kind of a genius from a product perspective. So, he basically manages all of our R&D and products, security research team, obviously our Salt Labs, and I do the rest. I mean, if you think about go to market, sales, marketing, operations, and then we split everything from finance to HR. So that's really how we kind of break up the organization between the two of us.
I know I'm going to pull up the site again. On your site, it says get a free API attack surface assessment. And then it says see your APIs like an attacker does. So I was looking at that. I was like, yeah, I want to see what my API looks like from an attacker standpoint. What does the assessment look like? How does that work?
Yeah, yeah, it's super simple to do. You can do it on your own, and it's basically a scan of your environment, and it gives you an attacker's viewpoint of what they would see if they were trying to, kind of infiltrate your organization. And it gives you all the details of your APIs, where they're housed, where they're, flowing through, all of that great stuff. And it gives you some really, really good data in terms of a lot of the zombie APIs or zombie MCP server protocols that make other functional areas within the organization that the CISO isn't aware of that just get up and running, right? So it gives you a really good detailed view of what an attacker would see if they were trying to infiltrate within your organization.
Does the company usually start there? They're like, let's take a look at this and see what's exposed first.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we normally do is we'll run it for a lot of our customers initially, just to give them an idea of what that kind of what their API environment looks like, and we always find some incredible insights that CISOs kind of have that oh my gosh moment, or wow moment, if you will. And from there, we normally move into the very first thing, which is visibility, right? What do I have? Because I don't know what I don't know. So it's that visibility, and then it's the governance, the posture gaps. What exposures might I have that I can truly jump into, and we could do that in minutes. Again, we don't even need traffic in order for us to be able to do that. It's surface, and then it's connect. And then once they want to achieve that, and then they want to move into protecting their APIs, then we go into connecting through API gateways or API management tools, to get traffic so that we can create a baseline and protect against any kind of deviation that might be causing them to have any awareness of, oh, I got to take a closer look at what's happening in my specific API.
I'm curious what the evolution of the customer looks like for you, where it started and kind of what ideal is now. But I'm curious, when you talk about this, do you have like IT professionals using this on the back end for clients too? Like, are there IT agencies being like, okay, they're just implementing your technology?
Yeah,
Or is
no,
that not
not
as
at this point.
common? No.
Yeah, not at this point. I mean, it's something like if you think about, organizations that create managed services for other companies, we haven't gone that route. But like one of our, obviously we're a portfolio company of CrowdStrike. I know that they've done that in the past, and it's something that we might be thinking about doing. It hasn't really kind of come to our attention at this point in time. We want to make sure that we're creating the value and making sure that the customers see the value, and then once it's so ingrained in API security or agentic or AI security, whatever you want to call it, becomes so prevalent that that might be an avenue for us.
I'm curious, and maybe it's the same. What does an ideal customer look like now compared to the beginning of the journey?
Yeah, it actually hasn't changed at all. We're specifically focused on the Fortune 500, Global 1000 type of organizations. Obviously, anybody that creates their own application. So if you think of financial services, I've got a mobile app that I log into from a consumer perspective, to two retail outlets, to transportation, to airline industries. We've got the top airline industries that are customers of ours. So it goes across the board, which is awesome, and an opportunity for us, and why we've got such amazing investors, because they see this as a very, very, very big market.
I don't know. I love to talk more thoroughly, maybe on the retail side or the airline side. Which one do you think would be better to talk through, and like how it works in that for that industry?
Sure. I mean, airline industry, we can talk about that.
Yeah, awesome. So I mean, I could see there's a lot of data passed and forth, passed back and forth, even when I go to check in, I like to get a physical ticket so that in case my battery runs out on my phone, I'm like going in, I'm typing in the code. There's a lot of data back and forth with email and the app and
Yeah.
everything. How does it work
Yeah.
for the airlines?
Yeah. So think about all the airlines. Any airline now, you can check in digitally. So they've got a mobile application that they check in digitally. They've got their rewards points are all digital. So think about the mobile app that basically, you do all of the, kind of, I'm buying, a trip, I'm checking my flight, checking into my flight, I'm checking bags. All of those elements are all API driven. So think about the exposure that has to millions of consumers that are using or flying, that specific airline. And then think about all the sensitive data. You've got my contact information, credit card information. You've got a lot of, sensitive data associated to that is rich for, kind of a bad actor to want to infiltrate that application and through their APIs to steal data. Because once I've got a certain amount of information, I can use it, potentially to other means of digital services that you might be, using, whether it's your bank or whether it's, I buy, clothes, online, all of those elements. So that's really, what we're protecting against, and what we're safeguarding, in that specific scenario from an airline perspective.
I don't know how long, the sales cycle is for you, but I mean, in any enterprise, when you're dealing with these companies, I'm sure it's long. I mean, maybe it's not as long as like, hey, we have this airline, this airline, this airline. Do you want yours? But the first airline or the first couple, so that goes into kind of the fundraising question, because I mean, you need a certain amount of runway to like get into these conversations and have them make the decision. Talk about the fundraising journey.
Yeah, I mean, look, fundraising, if anybody tells you that it's fun, it's not. It's rewarding at the end when you do get money. But initially, it is a lot of work. And when I say about a lot of work, it's you have to have kind of like not only a plan of what you're doing today, but like a 3 year and a 5 year plan of where you see the company going. And, the amount of money that you raise, how is it going to be utilized within the organization as you continue to scale? So you've got to have all of these elements, budget, not only budget, but so spend and calculations in terms of, the growth rate that you're going to have quarter over quarter, year over year, the amount of people that you're going to hire, all of these elements. And then, initially when it was just Roy and I, we were doing everything, right? Spreadsheets, budget allocations, forecasting, all of it. It is brutal. And it's, probably every organization has gone through. We went through a ton of no's before, we got our first yes. And then once you get your first yes, and then you're able to stabilize yourself, get customers and, see that trajectory, then it gets easier and easier. But it's hard.
Was the first yes through Y Combinator, or what? How did the
Well,
first yes happen?
so Y Combinator, as you're going through their
Like the
kind of
accelerator,
incubation, yeah, the
yeah.
incubation, they actually invest in the company and they give you, X amount of money. And then they've got an interesting little scenario in that until you raise, X amount of money, then they get to come back and do their pro rata if they want, or they can invest. And we were lucky enough that during our Series D, which was led by Capital G, which is Google's venture arm, YC wanted to I want to say double down. It was more than double down. I mean, they added quite a bit of money to the round because they were so convinced that we were going to be an amazing company. That's when they
Was this
really
before
put even more.
customers or after you started?
No, no, our Series D. This was after we had,
Oh, after. Okay. Yeah, it was
yeah,
your
several
Series D. Oh,
customers, and
gotcha. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's
Um,
yeah.
what I know along the way, you get no's, you get yeses, and you probably get a lot of advice along the way. Was there anything that sticks out from investors from the advice perspective, whether they invested or not?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, usually, you're fortunate enough to understand why they decided not to invest, and whether it's they're not sold on the team, or they're not sold on the technology, or they're not sold on kind of, the market potential. And or they're just not sold on kind of your vision of how you're going to grow the organization. So obviously, the no's that we got were actually really beneficial because we got so much insight and information in terms of what we needed to do to tweak our story to make it better, to make it more exciting, to make it more, kind of easier, per se for, organizations like Sequoia and, Capital G, to say absolutely categorically, this is the organization we want to invest in.
You mentioned, you and Roy, right, early on, talk about the evolution of the team. I'm sure like when people invest, like, okay, what are you gonna do with the money? And you're hiring
Yeah.
people. What did the team look like, team growth?
Yeah, I mean, first, you've got to get your first developers on board. I think we had 10 to 20 developers, because, after YC, we had a number of angel investors just to get started and just to kind of build the development organization. And then, and then Roy and I were doing everything from a go-to-market, not only, sales, pre-sales, we were doing marketing. We create our own website. I mean, all of this stuff that we did. But the focus is really, developers, and then it's product people, and then it's, marketing. Product marketing is your first, and then sales, right? So, I think the first probably, 2 years that we started the company, or 18 months, it was just Roy and I with developers and, maybe one product individual. And then I think we hired our first product marketing, and then once we had our product marketing, then we hired our first, rep along with an SE, and then things just started scaling from there.
I know it's not easy to find good developers. So how did you go
Yeah.
about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, so all of our developers, because we've got our R&D centers in Tel Aviv, so all of our developers are from Israel, and the market in Israel from a cybersecurity perspective, obviously with all the amazing, companies like Armis, Wiz, and I can go on and on. It's really difficult to get talented people. So not only do you have to have all the perks associated with lunches and all the nice offices and things, but also they want to be sold on the story, the journey, the growth potential, the market potential. So there's a lot of discussions of here's what we think the company is going to be in the next 3, 5, 10 years. So you kind of have to have that storyline, that narrative that gets people excited to want to join you. And then once you show some success, it's a lot easier because then they read about you and they're like, oh my God. And obviously when you start raising a ton of money, like we have, like, close to 300 million, then, it's like, whoa, something's going on here at Salt Security that I want to be part of.
And did Roy have a lot of connections there that helped, or
Yeah. I mean, look, he went through the Israeli armed forces. So, there's a ton of connections associated with that. Obviously, we got a ton of connections to other co-founders of other companies. So yeah, I mean, it's, Israel's an amazing country, and, it's a close-knit community. And we leverage as many relationships as we can. Obviously, even investors help from that perspective. Other employees, so you get a lot of employee referrals, help us from that perspective. Past lives, past companies that where you've had success with the other individuals. All of those things contribute to the capabilities of hiring talented employees.
yeah, it's super interesting. I did do an Israel business series on the podcast and had uh, one of the founding engineers at Mobileye, and he did talk about, I think he corrected me at one point, Michael. I think I said like something like, "Oh, you were acquired by Intel for 13.1 billion." He's like, "Jeremy, it was 13.2." I'm like, "Oh, I guess that decimal does make a difference in this
It's a
case."
difference.
But no, we talked about like just the ups and downs of the journey. I mean, it looks like this clear path, but it was just like, just hills and valleys, even that journey too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a lot of, hard work. I mean, I'm giving you all of the, kind of nice highlights associated, but in between those highlights, there's a lot of valleys that you have to kind of crawl through, and it's sometimes it is crawling through devastating no's from a from an investment perspective, customers not wanting to move forward with you initially just because they feel it's too risky. I mean, there's a lot of areas where you can get gutted, if you will, on a day-to-day basis, and having that positive mental attitude and making sure that you're focused on your vision is really important because you can get down pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm curious, Michael, scaling from a scaling perspective. I mean, as you grow, I want to talk about the scaling, but I want to go back to just to give people an idea, your first customer. How long did it take from like the idea to you actually got your first customer?
Yeah, it took about 2.5 years, to be honest. And I say 2.5 years because I'm starting from scratch, like 2016, where it was just an idea, so there was no product or anything like that. To about 2018 is when we really, the beginning of 2018 is when we got our first couple of customers, and it was before our angel investment from S Capital. But yeah, I mean, so it took a while, and I always, because I've been through this journey before, I always say that the first 10 customers are your hardest. It is hard because then after that, then from 10 to like 20, it's easier. From 20 to 50, a lot easier. From 50 to 100, right? Because then you've got a proven track record, and you can call other CISOs from a reference perspective. They tell you how amazing their product is. They can tell their friends how amazing their product is. What a great customer, or what a great partner we are. All of those elements that kind of come into play, which
Yeah.
just makes it easier.
No, I just want to give people a perspective because people see, oh, look at where they're at now, but that's not how it was
Yeah,
in the beginning. And I'm
right.
also curious, I don't know what your family looked like at the time, and what you tell them. And if they're like, Michael, Citrix is looking pretty good right now. Like it's 2 years, what do
Yeah.
you, I don't, what does family look like for you around that time? And what's the conversation, the dialogue look like there?
Yeah, I mean, I have two kids, and it was a lot of sacrifices. So they're not seeing dad as much because of all the travel, and not only just the travel, it's also just the amount of time and effort that you spend within the company outside of the family. So it's a lot of discussion point in, look, there's a lot of sacrifices that we're doing. It's going to get better, and it's going to be easier. So definitely, not, for the faint at heart. I mean, obviously, when we started, Roy didn't have a family, so it was much easier for him. But because I had done it before, my family was in tune to the type of effort, and time commitment it would take. So, I was lucky enough to have individuals within my family that understood exactly what we were doing and why.
Yeah, it's not easy. So now talking about scaling wise, what are some things you think about when you're scaling an organization? You've raised beyond, I don't know if it's beyond a Series D, but and
Mhm.
you've grown the team, you have big clients. Talk about now kind of the next phase of your thoughts on scaling.
Yeah, I mean, scale for us, it's all about, people, right? And if you think about all the functional areas, developers, marketing, sales, all of those elements, you just need to continue to have amazing individuals that can not only do what they need to do today, but can grow within the organization so that they eventually can become leaders themselves and hire themselves the replacements for individual contributors. So I think the hardest part from a scale perspective is always finding the right individuals that, and the storyline, A players, right? That really can help you continue to create, the solution that provides value to customers, and so on. But that's really kind of, what we think about from a scale perspective. And I think what's happening now because of agentic AI, it's like it's exploding because if you think about AI, AI agents, MCP protocols or servers and protocols and agent to agent protocols. I mean, all of those elements are APIs. So it's like the market is exploding now in terms of the potential of making sure that not only are you discovering these, APIs, you're also being able to govern them and you're also being able to protect them. And if you think about it, we're the only organization that's done it since, almost 2016. Obviously, we'll continue to do it now, and beyond. So
Yeah, in
that's
2016, it's funny, like we're talking now, right? That's kind of normal speak to talk about this. But if you said that in 2016, people are like, what the heck are you talking about?
yeah,
There was no chat GPT, I mean,
right.
or anything. So, I mean, there were
Yeah,
obviously APIs, but that's
yeah.
definitely evolved a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the conversations were, well, tell me, what do you mean by APIs? To, well, why can't my, like my WAF do this, or my second generation WAF do this, or why can't my API management, solution do this? So there's a lot of explanation of why you are still exposed, even though you've got current, uh, security tools in place that, potentially, or they thought could manage this. So there's a lot of explanation as to why we needed to exist and why they were still exposed. And it's interesting how that transformation goes from at the very beginning to now it's all about, CISOs call us and say, hey, we're looking at an API security solution. We heard self security is the best, tell us, how we can get started. So that evolution of conversation is immense and it's exciting. But at the very beginning, it's all about explaining why you exist and why it's important.
Yeah. I have a question about, I have one last question, but it's funny because if I was one of your salespeople, here's what I would say. They get on the phone, they're like, Sam Altman coached us. That's really all you need to know.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I wish it was that easy, by the
no,
way, but yeah.
and they just ask another question. No, Sam Altman coached us.
Yeah,
Come on.
exactly. Where do
Um,
we sign?
but you talked about mental mindset. And so my last question, first of all, I want to thank you. Before I ask my last question, people should check out salt.security to learn more. Really amazing story. They have lots of resources there that you can check out, even from like an API dummies security and a bunch of other kind of white papers that they have there. So you can check it out there. But when you talked about mental mindset, I think of mentors and I think of it could be actual mentors that you've had, or it could be distant mentors. Maybe it's a favorite book or podcast or something like that. So when you look back over your journey, who are some, it could be in-person mentors or distant mentors, like some of your favorite books, resources.
Yeah. Yeah, look, for me personally, and I think Roy would agree, like Carl Eschenbach, who was the general partner at Sequoia when he led our Series B, who is now the CEO of Workday. I mean, he helped us tremendously. He was amazing, great individual, great human, great mentor, just so business savvy. He also introduced us to a ton of potential customers. I think about him. I think about Mark McLaughlin, who's the former chairman of the board and CEO of Palo Alto Networks. He's given us a ton of unbelievable insights. And why is that important? Is because these people have done it before. They've got tremendous careers, and they're just phenomenal in helping you kind of see above kind of the weeds that you're in on a day to day basis. So I would mention those two individuals because we spend a ton of time with them, and we constantly have at the early stages like weekly discussions, turned into biweekly, turned into monthly, now in some cases quarterly. But yeah, I would look at those two. I'm trying to think of a book. The reality is because I spent so much time, from a work perspective, anything that I read, I want to just be, some, pleasing thing that I don't have to think about. So
You're like, not any business books, just like
exactly,
get
not
my
any
mind
business
off of
books.
business.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, there's one that this reminds me of one of the interviews, and that's what I love these interviews because I learn a lot. And I had Brett Brauman, who from Coastal Ventures, and he was talking about some of the companies and mentors he worked with, and so it's always good to hear, because then I go down that rabbit hole and go, oh, that's a cool, I've never heard of that person. I'm going to go study and look at some of what they're doing. So I encourage people to check those out. And just thank you, everyone. Check out salt.security. You can check out more episodes of the podcast. And we'll see everyone next time. Michael, thanks so much.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like 100 grand.